Hi, I'm Shaun Emerson, and welcome to Men Living's The Big Question. In Men Living, we're continually looking for ways to create spaces that will lead to more connection, growth, and harmony. With that mission in mind, we will assemble a diverse group of individuals in a virtual space to explore a societal big question once every month. Our intention is to offer perspective from different angles, promoting more curiosity and understanding. The members of the Men Living Big Question panel are Ish Orker, Sarah-Bess Dworin, Jason Samadas, André Bouey, Dr. Stacy Reicharzer, Erica Martinez, and I will moderate. In our first episode, we explore the idea of life balance. Most of us live lives of multiple roles and identities that, for a variety of reasons, can throw our lives out of balance, creating difficulty and stress. We discuss these challenges, differences between genders, and approaches to finding more balance. Panel members for this question are André, Sarah-Bess, and Ish. We start with panel introductions. Enjoy.
Go around real quickly and introduce yourself if you would. SB, Sarah-Bess, would you start first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah-Bess Dworin. Everybody calls me SB for short. And my pronouns are she, her. And I am a culture and climate coach for schools and community-based organizations using social and emotional learning tools and restorative practices to move to a more harmonious world. So very much in sync with the mission of Men Living. I am currently on the lands, the ancestral lands of the Cheyenne people. And I'm really, really happy to be in conversation with all of you.
André?
Yes, my name is André Bouey. I currently reside in Aurora, Illinois, which is about 30 minutes outside of Chicago. Glad to be here with you three fine, lovely people today. I do a lot of things. You know, I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a husband, I'm a friend, I'm a brother. You know, I feel like those entitle somebody to speak to them because those are roles that I take seriously. But my place of employment is I'm a high school counselor at Joliet Central High School. I love doing it. You know what I'm saying? I'm amazed that I get to wake up and do this for money, you know what I'm saying? Whereas when I was growing up, I didn't think that I would ever get a job where I would have to get paid money for it. So I'm at a high school working from 14-year-olds to 18-year-olds. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Thanks, André. Ish?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ish. I use she, her pronouns. And I am someone who's always been fascinated by this question of how can we live in right relationship with each other? So I have been working in the area of conflict resolution, I think my entire career. I've worked in fields of law and social work, DEI, always asking the same question and trying to come up with really creative solutions. I am most excited anytime I get to sit in circle with others. I do my best to try to live restoratively, and I'm really seeking to gain wisdom from others in this circle here tonight. I'm so happy to be here.
Thanks, Ish. Okay, so the big question for this month is, what is life balance? And so you've all kind of talked about different roles and different identities that you're living in that make up who you are. And so maybe let's start on, what is life balance to you? And anybody can go.
Well, I guess I was trying not to think about the question because I feel like if I think about it too much, then I get lost in my thoughts. So when I first got your question, Shaun, I immediately thought just of myself personally. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do I live with life balance within myself? Because I feel like that in order for me to live in balance with other people, that I'm going to have to figure out how to balance the things that I have to do myself as far as taking care of myself is concerned. And so what I mean by that is, you know, making sure that I'm healthy, making sure emotionally that I'm healthy, making sure that, physically that I'm healthy, that I'm eating right, things of that nature, making sure that I have enough time to process and think. And what I'm learning is since I've been starting to do that, there's been this external push for me not to do that, but to stay busy. You know what I'm saying? I have this push from other people. Like, if you're not doing anything, there must be something wrong with you. You know what I'm saying? So you need to be doing something at every minute of the day. And then you go to sleep and you wake up and then you're doing something in every minute of the day. And that to me is very overwhelming. It fills my life with anxiety. And I've pushed back on that. And so once I'm able to kind of figure out myself, it's then easy for me to figure out how to live in balance with other people, particularly the people that are close to me, which I try to make sure that I carve out as much time for as possible. And I'll stop there.
Ish, SB.
I can share that my thoughts on work-life balance have really evolved over time. I feel like I used to think about it in terms of percentages, right? So I need to spend 50% working and then 50% of my time relaxing or doing something fun and social. And I looked at balance in terms of this formula. And what I realized is that's not real balance for me. That if I've been going nonstop for a week, maybe I need to evaluate whether I need to take 2, 3, 4 weeks and go real easy on myself. And maybe like if I stayed up all night one night, I need to sleep in for the next 3 days, right? Like you just need to learn to listen to what your body needs and respond. And that's a new practice for me. I have not always been really good at that, but I feel like I'm trying to think of balance as being really authentic in terms of listening to my needs and trying to meet those needs instead of sticking to a formula.
I love hearing both of you talk about your work-life balance because knowing you, it's so authentic and it's so true, and it's very inspiring to be in your presence and to also be kind of held accountable by your right sizing of work, and your I think, André, your joy and your love for your work that, just shines through, and Ish, your real kind of setting of boundaries that work cannot be an oppressive place for you. And I think that's, both of your journeys have inspired mine. And I think there's a lot to say right now about my work-life balance, such as it is. And I think what's important to say kind of at the outset of this conversation is the way that structures of oppression influence our ideas about our productivity and our creativity, our freedom. And it feels like a true, I acknowledge my privilege to be even having this conversation, that I get to have a work-life balance. And I think maybe even 150 years ago, no one would even have understood the question. And the creation of unions and the understanding of optimal working conditions and also optimal productivity and creativity conditions have evolved so much over such a short period of time. So we're really, I think, striving to understand ourselves as worker bees and what that means and what our capacity is. I'm right now thinking a lot about the balance between productivity and creativity and how they might be different. Cranking out deliverables as opposed to innovating and creating fresh ideas and pathways. It is something that I've given some thought to recently. Certainly the idea of the genius hour is one that really sparks my imagination, where there are corporations that invite their workers to do absolutely nothing for an hour a week, and to take a walk, to daydream. And it's in those moments when we actually come up with our very best ideas and insights. So I think those are a few thoughts, and I'd be happy to speak on a more personal level if that's helpful as well.
So I think it's interesting thinking about the words work life. Like, work isn't life. or and so why are we separating those two things? In fact, when we were thinking about the big question, I looked at it and said, well, why are we talking about work-life balance? Isn't it just life balance? And then what's in our life that we're balancing out? The other words that really come to me when I think about this question are things like obligation and intention. And what are the things that I'm obligated to do that may or may not throw my life out of balance, that I feel I'm obligated to? And what am I intentional about? And so if I'm thinking about and mindful about what I want to do in my life, and you're right, SB, we're very fortunate to be here talking about this issue or this question. Does that, if I'm intentional about it, does that change the balance in my life? And so I'm curious if any of you are reacting to any of those words in how you think about balance.
Yeah, I mean, I wanna chime in. First of all, I wanna like derail the conversation a little bit. Ish, like when you said what you did about conflict resolution, I'm just like my heart jumped because that sounds awesome what you do. So I just wanted to name that before I forgot. All right, so back to Shaun and what you said. So when you mentioned the word obligation, um, I immediately got some anxiety, you know what I'm saying? Because like I'm learning that I have this part of myself. It's the part that hates being controlled. Like I am like, and as I get older, this part of myself is growing very big and strong and powerful. And anytime someone wants to control me, now I'm just pushing back to the point where like I don't even have any fear about pushing back anymore, including at work. Like I'm to the point where I can tell my boss, no, I'm not going to check my email outside of work hours. No, I'm not going to respond to your text message on a Saturday about what's going on. That could wait until Monday. You know what I'm saying? And um, so yeah, I just think that, if I had the perfect situation, I could just do what I wanted when I wanted. And I think to what Ish said, sometimes I don't like sometimes that doesn't fall between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. Sometimes there's a week where I just need to only work 1 hour or think 1 hour because that's how tired I am that week. But then there's other weeks that maybe I can put in 10-hour days because whatever I'm doing is giving me that much energy to be able to do so. But I love having the power and the control to be able to make that decision myself and not allow someone else to make that decision for me, particularly when it's to the best interest of them and not to the best interest of me.
Mhm.
So I want to just pick up on that because André and I really share a resistance to authority. And I think that there is, in that kind of land of obligation, there is something that's connected to authority and certainly connected to hierarchy. And so I'll share a little snippet of my work journey, which is that after working at an organization that I found oppressive to me and to others, I realized that I didn't have to be bound by that kind of hierarchical process and system. And I work for myself, and that has all kinds of challenges and also privileges. And so when it comes to obligations, and I ask myself, to whom am I obligated? I can be obligated to those I wish to serve, and I wish to serve kids. I wish to serve kids who are vulnerable. And so I can remain focused on that. And I know that that's true for many of you in the room. And I think that my work-life balance has to keep coming back to that question of purpose. And it's also hard because that is a question that is never ending and never satisfied. The kind of bottomless pit of need is always present when you're in the social service professions. And a very wise friend named Shaun Emerson helped me to think about how to prioritize and how to know when enough is enough. After I listed to him, all of the things that I'm involved in, and so how I can't. And he said, well, what's bringing you joy? And so I think there's another binary there, the work-life balance. Maybe it's the joy-obligation balance, and that's how we think, about it in another level. Ish, how about you?
Oh, I'm thinking about everything that's being shared, and I resonate with all of it. Both of those words, Shaun, obligation and intention, are things I'm thinking about right now. To your point earlier, SB, about the privilege of rest and leisure. I was not raised in a household that valued rest. We worked. My parents worked all the time. They prioritized work over family time. And so that was the model I had. And I think, coupled with the fact that I didn't have anyone to pay for my education, I took out a lot of loans. I have, for the most part, always had 2 to 3 jobs that I've been balancing. And 15 years later, I still have the loans, right? And so this concept of how can I be intentional about work and rest at the same time has always been a struggle for me. And it's something that I'm still learning. You might follow the nap ministry on Instagram. It's a wonderful account, right? And it's this idea that by resting, it's a very specific form of resistance. And I love that so much. And I'm really trying to emulate that in my life, but I don't know if I'm really there yet.
So why would taking a nap be a form of resistance? I mean, I get it, but I want tell everyone why it's a form of resistance.
I think it speaks to the productivity culture and white supremacy culture that Sarah-Bess was referring to earlier, right? That our value can be tied to how productive we are. And so if the goal is to feel good about ourselves or to feel we're making meaningful contributions to our families and to society, we would never stop working. We would never stop producing. And so how do we create a different set of values? How do we orient ourselves very differently to how we show up, to what's important, to what we prioritize, and how do we not center work in making those decisions?
All right, so stay on that. So what are are there some things that you're doing now to help keep your life, I mean, maybe you're taking those naps, to keeping your life in balance, or just as you work through all that you do as a mother, as a lawyer, and some of the other things that are part of your identity? Are there techniques that you're employing to find that balance?
Well, I'd love to hear from others as well. I know André was talking about boundaries, which I think can be
Yes.
really helpful, right?
Yeah.
Learning what you can say no to and choosing to do so. But it's
Mhm.
also really, I think, about what you're choosing to say yes to. So SB knows that I have prioritized being in a weekly circle. It's every Thursday at noon. I take it as my lunch hour and it's just on my calendar, right? And so that's
Mhm.
something that I do for my own well-being. And I know that it makes a difference in my week. Each and every time I'm there, I am transformed. And so that's something I had to really work towards, to say no for people who wanted to use that time for meetings, saying no when I wasn't feeling up to it and thought other things needed to take priority. And there were many distractions, but it's been 2 years now. And now it's just a regular part of my wonderful life.
Yeah, I think just, as Ish was talking, I think Sarah Bess kind of hit on this a little bit too. Like, think about the people who we imagine in our society that are taking breast or rest or breaks. Um, we feel that those individuals, like, if particularly if they're poor individuals, they're not making a lot of money, like, they deserve to be there. You know what I'm saying? They deserve to be there because they haven't worked hard to get at a different spot. You know what I'm saying? So we as a collective justify oppression of people just based on their perceived lack of productivity. You know what I'm saying? Even though I know a lot of people who are poor that really work very hard. And in fact, as Ish was talking about her family, that resonated with my family as well. My grandfather had 2 or 3 jobs and was working them hard and nonstop, and which was great because it was able to put our family in a position to be middle class. But the consequence of that is that maybe we didn't get to know him as deeper as we should have, as if he only had one job and he was there with us longer. Maybe he would have survived longer. Maybe he would have lived longer without having to do those 3 jobs, you know. And again, the money wise, it worked out, but the connection and the relationship wise, I'm not sure if that was a big, if that sacrifice made sense to it. So I'm trying to think in my head, would I rather have been poor but more time with him, or would I rather have been richer and for him to work 4 or 5 jobs? You know, because I do like money as well. So I don't know, but I think you bring up some interesting points.
Andre, I'm curious. You know, your earlier comment about the boundaries and setting those boundaries with your boss, let's say, as it relates to emails and meetings. Do you do a risk calculation in setting those boundaries and creating that balance, or is it just something that this is intentionally, this is how I'm going to live my life, and I'm in a, you know, either you can live with that and have me because otherwise you don't have André Bouey, or how do you go about making that calculation to set the boundaries?
Well, I think it kind of goes off what was said earlier. It's just really about how I feel and what's bringing me joy. You know, so I've been in a situation. So I've been in education since 2007. In the first 5 or 6 years of my time in the profession, I burnt myself out because I was working harder and harder and harder, trying to get certain metrics and stuff like that. And I recognized that I was burning myself out. My empathy had went away. I didn't care about things like I used to. Like I figured out that I was burnt out. And so it took me 2 to 3 years to get back to the point where I wasn't burnt out anymore. And then once I was there, what I decided was I had to listen to my body and what my body was telling me. You know what I'm saying? And so now it's about what I'm feeling is going to give me energy, and what I'm feeling is going to give me joy and things of that nature. So for example, when Shaun hits me up and says, hey, I want to get together a group of people and have a conversation, the feelings in my body is joy and satisfaction and all that stuff. So I'm easily able to say yes, you know, versus if my boss hits me up and says, hey, I want you to work on a Saturday passing out papers, then I'm immediately going to feel what my body says about that. If my body says no, then I just say the no and just kind of deal with the consequences from that. Now, I'm not against work. You know what I'm saying? I know there's this whole thing about, I talk to older people and say, well, the millennials, they don't want to work anymore, blah, 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 blah. I'm not against work, and I'm not against working hard, but I'm against working for things that don't bring me a certain level of satisfaction, because I just feel like life is too short for that. You know what I'm saying? I could die tomorrow, and I don't want to be spending that time doing something that I hate, or doing something that is not going to bring me that joy that we talked about before.
I think because I have seen André set boundaries in real time, it is really an experience of witnessing a person with a really strong compass. And I think that that's what we're all talking about, is how do you cultivate your compass? How do you have that magnetic understanding when you're making a decision that points you true north, as opposed to wobbling all over the place? And so I think it is about, certainly about age. We've all referenced elders and the way that elders have influenced our mindsets. And I'll just pick that up and say, I'm thinking about my 2 grandfathers, one who was twice a refugee, first from Russia and then from Cuba, and definitely did not rest and did not prioritize rest, and worked hard first in the sponge business, fishing for sponges off the coast of Cuba, and then in this country in the scrap metal business. And his whole identity was built up around work and the opportunity to pull his family into the middle class, as you say, André. And then my other grandfather, who is alive and well at 95 years old and still working, now remotely during the pandemic, who believes in naps, who grew up in this country, and who takes a very balanced, holistic approach to work. And it has enabled him to live well, live into old age, and still be extremely, I won't say productive, but a tremendous contributor and a caregiver to others. He is a therapist and has had, many different stages in his career. So it is about cultivating that compass, that mindset that points you one way or another. And I think for me, when I think about mindset, this springtime is a really good time to have this conversation. I'm really glad to have this conversation around the time of the vernal equinox. I feel like nature gives us guides if we choose to we choose to pay attention to her. And I've been mulling this over today, and this idea that there is one day of perfect perfect balance between daylight and nighttime. And it's just the one day, and there are 2 days in the entire cycle that are a perfect balance. And the rest of it is somewhere along the continuum. So I think that generally in these conversations, we get so focused on the binary work, life, joy, obligation, all this, and nature kind of crushes that binary, and wants to be really non-binary about it, because it lives in agricultural time, in cyclical time, as opposed to a much more limited view. And so I think that's part of why we're bringing in the elders. Having kind of a long distance view is really helpful. So even if today I may not have worked at all, or if another day I worked way too much, what does it look like over months, over years? How do you create that kind of balance along this extended continuum, as opposed to only focusing on the middle, that one fulcrum that is such a limiting idea and is aspirational at best and may frustrate most of us to try to seek to attain.
So it's really interesting. You talk about you may have worked not at all today. Let's just say that. And really this started as a question for you and Ish, because one of the things that we're always kind of looking at in Men Living is cultural norms, societal structures, gender structures, what works and what doesn't work. And so I think about work-life balance, and there's work, right? You just said, okay, I hardly did any work today, but you're with your family, working with your daughter. And so I wonder for you and Ish in particular, and then Andre can go. If you're not working, what is life? Is life more work? Because you're women in this world? And so I'm wondering that. Feel free to respond or not.
Shaun, I think what comes to mind are the various ways in which people have tried to describe what has happened as a result of the pandemic. And some people say the lines between home life and work life were blurred, and others say they were obliterated, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's just no distinction anymore. And so that comes to mind because I think particularly if you work from home and you are a caregiver, whether it's children or adults or partners or anyone, it's a full-time responsibility. It doesn't matter if your loved ones are physically with you or not, you are probably in your mind tackling some mental list of things that need to get done, or research that needs to happen, or planning that needs to occur. So yes, I would say all the time we are doing some type of work. And I think the question is really, what work is meaningful to you, right? Whether it's at home or professionally, it's really important, and probably also a privilege, to be able to do the work that really brings you a sense of satisfaction and meaning. And that's how I try to look at it, because if I've spent all day at my desk, at my computer, and I'm exhausted and my child needs something from me, I have to be really, really curious about what is it that this child is thinking and wanting and needing, and how can I meet that need, and not just think, oh my goodness, I'm so tired. There's no way. There's just no way. I can't push this child away and say, I don't have the capacity in my brain right now. So I really have to work extra hard to connect. I think that's that's what I've been struggling with over the pandemic, is how do I have the space in my brain without even a commute to decompress or to create some distance, right, from the problems I've been working at my desk, to then attend to what's needed from me in my family.
SB?
I want to give it up to my husband right now in this moment, which allows me to be here with all of you having this conversation. And I think that that's a big part of it. You know, that this, I really appreciate you naming the gender component, Shaun, of all of this. It does, caregiving, you know, can feel really, really gendered and can drive a wedge between folks in relationships. I think that the other thought that I have about that is very often we just label caregiving as unpaid work. So that obviously has a different value in our capitalistic society. But what's true for me right now is that sometimes caregiving can feel like an obligation as opposed to joy. And so I think, again, it is a mindset question about, you know, what are you bringing to it? What life are you bringing to the present moment in whatever labor you're engaged in? One of the things that I've always admired about André is the way that his eye, and maybe you'll see it in a moment, the way your eyes light up when you talk about your child and about being with your child and what a joy it is. And that fluctuates for me. And so it is really helpful to have kind of a counterpoint in ways of engaging labor and connection in other spheres.
André, thoughts on this?
Yeah, you know, I think that, you know, I want to just echo the sentiments about, you know, this whole caregiving thing and the gendered aspect of it, because I'm kind of feeling it firsthand. You know, because you know, as most of you guys know, or at least two of you guys know, I have a 1-year-old, and for the most part, my wife has taken over the responsibility of caregiving for that child and working and doing her best to kind of keep our house afloat while I'm gone. You know, there was a time where I was at home and I was able to help out with that more. But since going back to work a year ago full time, that's shifted. And so part of me has felt bad about that and has wanted to take over more responsibility. But I feel this magnet saying that, nah, bro, that's not what you're supposed to do. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if it's something that's overt or covert, but I do feel a push that says, nah, this is not what you do. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes even from my wife, you know what I'm saying? Because, you know, my wife, you know, she's breastfeeding. And so that, those of you guys that know about breastfeeding, that takes a toll on the woman. The woman has to be on call for food, you know what I'm saying? And the kid doesn't care, you know, what you got going on. You know what I'm saying? If he's hungry, he's going to let you know that he's hungry or she's hungry, you know? So I've been feeling, I felt bad about that, you know, saying like, okay, well, what's my responsibility here in this whole thing, you know? But what I'm starting to learn, and I'm still trying to figure out, is that maybe at this point of the game, maybe my focus shouldn't be 100% on my son and more on my wife. Maybe that's my role. My role maybe should be to support her in the same similar way that she supported me before we've had children and me trying to get my career off the ground. You know what I'm saying? There's things that she did, cooking dinners, things of that nature, when I had to work late and I was coaching and things of that nature. And she picked up the slack to support me while I was doing that, when I was doing those activities. And so maybe now my job is to get more focus more on the relationship and focus on how I can support my wife. So little by little, I'm trying to find ways to support her in a way that makes her life easier. And I'm not perfect at that, but I think I'm learning how to do it better than I did maybe 6 months ago.
So there he is.
There he is.
Yeah, there he is. So So SB, you mentioned that Sam right now is helping you in order supporting the family in order for you to attend this. Is there a good communicate, if you want to talk about it, is there a good communication that goes on between you and Sam to work through because you both have what I would say is demanding careers and a daughter. Is communication a big part of finding balance within the family?
Oh, for sure. And I think at the beginning of our relationship, especially, I think the foundation of a relationship is so important. And we really spoke intentionally about egalitarianism, about the ways in which patriarchy creeps into relationships and harms both women and men. And non-binary folk. That doesn't apply to our relationship, but I think that was my choice in a partner, was because that was something that was a value that Sam held. And I'll just say right now that we're in a situation where we have a lot of demands at home, and our daughter is needing extra special attention. And so, in the spirit of speaking about balance, my husband has taken FMLA so that there can be a full-time on deck, on duty caregiver, parent for our daughter, and I'm the one that gets to to have more time for my non-caregiving work or caregiving in the community, but not caregiving to the family. So I really am appreciating that. I'm appreciating that as a sacrifice, as a representation that it's not all on me. And at the same time, it is a feeling of being split in the middle, of having to do it all. I haven't felt that way so much as in the past 6.5 years of being a mom, but I do feel more of that mom guilt now, that my partner is available all the time and I am less available, and having to figure out how to make piecemeal of my work and then also be able to participate in life. And I see it play out in my relationship with my daughter. I see that she is favoring him in all kinds of ways just in the past week of this arrangement. So these dynamics are dynamic and fluid. And I think more and more as workplaces are able to acknowledge that the just reality that people have always been and continue to be holistic beings, the more we'll be able to function in effective and wholehearted ways in the workplace, because we can, we have the bandwidth to be at home as well.
Yes, you have a couple boys. Have you faced any of, as your boys are older, have you faced any of these challenges as your boys have grown up?
So I think a lifelong challenge has been how to balance time in service and time with family. And I remember growing up, I really resented the way in which my parents prioritized taking care of others in the community over
Mm,
what I perceived as a child as over taking care of me. And I wanted more of their time. I wanted more of their attention, even though I knew they were doing wonderful things. My mother was a nurse and did all kinds of shift work. Sometimes it was overnights, sometimes it was unexpectedly, right? She'd be called in to cover a shift. And my dad traveled a lot. He did community development. He was a preacher. He was a teacher. And so he was always being pulled into other people's lives.
mm,
And I mention that because I could see the cycle repeating for myself. A while ago, I spent 7 years as a hospice social worker. And we would be called, right? When someone dies, there really isn't a schedule. You just have to go. And I remember having to say goodbye to my children and tell them, well, somebody else needs me right now. And I really could almost like catch myself because I felt like I had switched roles. I was now the parent who was prioritizing taking care of others instead of staying home. And so it's something that I've struggled with. I don't think I have the answer to that. I don't think I want to instill in my children the importance of living a life of service and thinking about ways in which we can make really impactful contributions to our communities. And also, I think it's really important that they feel safe and secure and nurtured and cherished at home. So I've always strived to do both. And I don't know if there's any such thing as a perfect balance, but hopefully the right messages are getting across to them.
I'm curious in this day and time, the world that we live in. We're here on technology on our computers doing a video call. Does technology enhance our balance, or does it make it more difficult to find balance? Now, I say that as someone who was deep in social media, who quit social media, and is kind of being dragged back in.
Poor Shaun.
my life is a wreck, right? What do you think? Technology help or
I think
hurt?
it's a tool, and it's how you use it. And it's a particularly addicting tool. And so you have to be really wise in its use, especially the social media piece and just screens in general. And so I think it really depends on the person. I think it can increase your flexibility if you wanted to, and it can make you chained to the computer at 11 o'clock at night if you allow it to. And that is also a very privileged, thing to say. So like anything, it is what you make it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Shaun. And, me and you have had this conversation before, and I've gone back and forth, just kind of like how you've gone back and forth. Overall, I think technology is a good thing. You know what I'm saying? It's a good tool. If used appropriately, it can build relationships, but oftentimes that's just not what I see anymore. I think that what technology has done effectively is make us lazy in building relationships. You go on my Facebook page, I got like 500 friends, right? These are my friends, these people don't know me, what I'm saying? In fact, maybe 2 or 3 people out of the 500 actually know me. And those people, they don't even interact with me on Facebook because, they know that I'm full of shit most of the time on Facebook. You know what I'm saying? And so they just ignore me and they just call me up or they come to my house or whatever. But then the interactions that I have on this platform is, is very superficial. It feels like it could be connection, but it's not really connection. And these people don't know who I am and I don't know who they are. And we're assuming that we do because we're friends and we're following each other and we're posting pictures about our kids and stuff like that. But that's not real connection. And so I think that it just kind of makes us lazy to think that we're, building relationships, but in actuality, I don't think that we are.
I don't think anybody would be surprised if you had 500 friends, though. It's just what I'm saying. And it's not just social media. It's the nature. So I was involved in technology really early in my career. It's all the systems that have been put in place that make business easier. The phones that are in our hands that allow us to get emails and messages and texts and phone calls that keep it going continuously. And so in the name, again, as we kind of started this discussion out in the name of productivity and efficiency, arguably, unless to SB's point, the technology can manage you or you can manage the technology. SB, you're leaning in.
Yeah, I'm leaning in. I have kind of like a vision in my mind that I want to try and get, because I stand by that idea. It is a tool and it's not going away. So I don't want to, speak as some kind of a Luddite here, but I am thinking about the ways in which our biology is just not effectively wired for this hyper-connected, technologically wired life. And the way in which technology and the screen kind of pulls us out of our reference point, pulls us out of our context. it kind of decontextualizes us as people in a way. Like to be able to have a conversation with people from all over the world as we've been able to for some time now, it's not normal. And to feel a sense of obligation to a string of friends, a list hundreds long, it's not possible. And it leads to me feeling like, if I have a pitcher of water and I have, exponentially more cups that I have to fill. And Shaun and I, we were talking about the kind of magic number of people that a person is really kind of biologically wired to know and care about. And it's a lot smaller than the people that we are currently, connected with. And so the vision in my mind is the way that we lived before air travel, even before railroad travel. We grew where we were planted. Or where circumstances of history and trauma and dislocation planted us. And there were limitations, and we lived a more circumscribed existence. And I don't want to idealize or romanticize, pre-penicillin life, but there is some way in which we are like really spreading ourselves way too thin with these technological advances, and the way in which we are just, by dint of owning these machines, really harming our planet. When you think about all of the kind of micro metals that are required for each and every one of our cell phones, and how it's, driving civil war in Congo, among other places. It's, in the balance of technology, no technology, I think that there is a lot of harm that we don't want to acknowledge. That really troubles me on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah, the thing I do on the positive side of the technology, for me, particularly over the last couple of years, and all of you know this, I've made dozens of friends, relationships via this technology that we are on right now, that I never would have met all across the country. So from that standpoint, it's extremely powerful to create some of those connections. And so I don't want to overly demonize some of the technology, because I think it allows us to kind of spread. Unlike your point, SB, I think it can allow us to spread our community as well.
I certainly agree, and that's why why I love participating in something like this. But I also want to center and celebrate the wisdom of men living in coming together physically. In your physical gatherings that are so important. And these small batches, this idea of a small batch really speaks to the wisdom of how people connect really well. And that can happen in technology if we use the tool well. And I'm really glad to kind of learn from you as a person who also resists some social media about how to do it well and wisely.
Ish, any comments on the technology?
Oh, I hate that weekly screen report. That tells me how much time I've spent on my phone. I think, I identify with all of the above, right? I am someone who's a lifelong learner, and I just cherish opportunities to learn from others. I love webinars. I love attending lectures. And in the last 2 years, the options have been endless, right? And it's all available with the click of the mouse. But I don't have that much time. And so sometimes I end up feeling like I am not engaging enough with the material that's available to me. So much of it is free, which is just really unprecedented. And I want to absorb it all, and I can't. And then I feel guilty. And then I think, well, I can't just spend all my time trying to catch up on all the things I've recorded and don't have time to go back and watch. So I agree that there needs to be a sense of an internal compass to what you were saying earlier, SB, of when is it enough? How do we not let what's available and our access to it control our sense of of how we should be spending our time and the best use of our time, because we all know our time is a very precious commodity, and we need to make really good choices. And I think technology has made it harder for me to make good choices. My time.
Thanks, Ish. So let's wrap it up. How about one thing that you hope folks watching this will take away from our discussion today? Anybody can go. I love how you're all looking up in the air for the
I can
answer.
start, and I'll keep it short. I love the word intentionality. I really hope people take the time to think for themselves, what is important to you? What do you want to be intentional about? I love how SB referenced the season, and I think of spring, I think of growing things, and I think of growth, I think of renewal. So it's a perfect time, I think, for us to think about how we want to spend our lives and what it is we really want to cultivate.
In the
Yeah,
spirit of
I
that,
think. Oh, go ahead.
no,
Go ahead,
you.
SB.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Real quickly. I just think that, if I were to nail down one thing that I want them to take away from this thing is really take some time to figure out and how to lead yourself. You know what I'm saying? I think so many times in our society and the way we're structured, we're always focused on how to lead other people to do what it is that we think they need to do and stuff like that. But I think that learning how to lead yourself and to kind of figure out what works best for you, I think is very important. So that may look different. I mean, from my conversation with the three of you guys, it looks different between us. So I know it's probably different between the people who are watching this. So one thing I think is been helpful for me is to cut out as many distractions as possible, really take some time to be bored and focus on myself and what's going on in my mind and my emotions and things of that nature, and be able to compile that into a concoction that allows me to figure out what works best for me on any given day. And I think that has allowed me to do a lot of special things within the last 2 years, probably starting with the pandemic. So.
Thanks, Andrew.
So for me, because I love questions, and questions really fuel my direction in life and my direction in relationships, I think it's finding your own essential question that can help you to determine in any given moment, how well you're achieving that balance. And so some questions that have arisen in the conversation this evening are, to whom am I obligated? What is labor and what is work? What length of time am I thinking when it comes to assessing my level of balance? How can I find work that allows me to be a holistic being? Am I doing what I love in this present moment? So just finding your question and continually probing it, I think is a helpful one for me. And certainly my answer to a lot of those questions are, I'm really grateful to be able to make time for what matters. And for me, it's having good conversations with good people like you. So thank you for the invitation, Shaun, and for this good conversation.
So my two takeaways real quick. One is that I hope the audience understands that this is our first run. Like, we didn't do a lot of practices. So, bear with us. We have months to come. And secondly is life balance. It's life. And I'm gonna side with Ish's point about intentionality. I mean, it's how do you want to live your life? And everybody's kind of talked about choices they make, and so it's in the end, isn't it really about choice? So I guess I'm ending with questions too, SB. Next month, education's role in social justice. Yeah. Thanks everyone. Always good to see you. SB, good luck in Denver. And we'll talk to you all soon. Peace and love.
Peace and love, Shaun. Be well, everyone.